Good afternoon, and welcome once again to the Conversation with Al McFarlane's Book Chat Thursday. I am W.D. Foster Graham, and I will be your host for this session. Um, as always, the Conversation with Al McFarlane provides stimulating, lively, robust discussions on everything in the Black and African diaspora. Now, we have recently exceeded our subscribers to over 1,000, and we're shooting for that 2,000. So you like our content and you're enjoying our guests, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Because say the Conversation with Al McFarlane is from 1 to 2 p.m. And we are on the Inside News Minnesota channel and also the YouTube channel. And of course, today we are celebrating Pride Month, and definitely the pride in those of us, like myself, who stand at the intersection of African American and LGBT. On a personal note, I'm very happy to say that my recent release of my novel, To Thine Own Self, I give thanks to all those who have supported me throughout my journey as an author. Now, I'd like to introduce our guest authors for our panel. And they have all been on the show before, and they are just an amazing group. When they say representation matters. Starting with Frederick Smith, who is originally from Detroit, Motown. He is the author of 6 romance novels set in Los Angeles and San Francisco that feature Black and queer characters. His latest novel, One and Done, is described as a Black, queer, higher education, Bay Area romance. Will be coming out on June 11th of this year on Bold Strokes Books. A higher education professional by day, Frederick does student affairs and diversity and inclusion work at San Francisco State University. And he is a product of the Detroit Public Schools. He has been a lifelong creative writer. And along the way, he earned an undergraduate degree in journalism, TV news at the University of Missouri School of Journalism, a master's degree in higher education at Loyola University, Chicago, and a doctorate in educational leadership for social justice at Loyola Marymount University. He's passionate about social justice, all things Beyonce, Black life, queer life, romance novels, books in general, and people pursuing and completing their educational goals. Now, our next panelist is LaToya Hankins, and she is the author of SBF Seeking and K-Row, The Sweet Taste of Sisterhood, and Ice-T Love box set. Their short stories have been included in various anthologies, including In Our Words, Queer Stories from Black, Indigenous, and People of Color writers, and Black from the Future, a collection of Black speculative writing. And she currently serves as the national president of Gamma Sci-Fi, a predominantly African-American organization of men and women in the arts, including literature, visual art, music, theater, and dance. She serves as a content producer for Black Spaces Sci-Fi from a Black LGBTQ perspective, a YouTube channel that discusses Black representation in science fiction. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree from East Carolina University and is a Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Inc. member. So readers can save her blog, Caviar and Pate, Memoirs of a Flavor for Childhood, and keep up with her literary adventures at www.latoyahankins.com or by following her at LaToya Hankins or at Toya Hankins on Instagram. Last and definitely not least is Dwayne Vernon, and he is a self-published author of 7 novels, My Man, My Boys, Deception, Lies, and Truth, Roman, Vengeance, Willful Intent, The Master's Plan, and Counterpunched. His first novel was published in June 2007, and he is from Portsmouth, Virginia, by way of Oklahoma City, and he also served in in the federal government service, and he is looking to pitch a TV pilot and a movie. And he spends the majority of his time writing. And yes, he is a screenwriter with 4 short movies under his belt. So it is my great pleasure and privilege to introduce this panel to celebrate Pride Month. Greetings, everybody.
Greetings.
Greetings.
How's it going?
Oh, awesome, awesome, awesome. So now I know all of you have been on the show, and I've had the honor of reviewing your books and the spirit and the love and the passion you bring to them. So since it's been a minute, we're going to do a check-in. So let's say to tell us what you've been up to these days. So we'll start with LaToya.
Hi. First of all, it is a pleasure to be in everyone's company on this fabulous Thursday. Happy Pride Month again. Since we last chatted, I have actually been working in my craft. I'm still working on my 3rd novel, where it investigates how mothers and daughters coexist, and how you're never too old to appreciate the mother that you have. I've always been doing my work on my community service, and thank you for recognizing that I belong to 2 international fraternities. I'm a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, which shapes my life, having celebrated over 3 decades of membership. And I'm also the national president of an international fraternity for artists and creators, Gamma Xi Phi. So I'm excited again to continue to work on being a better author, being a better citizen, and I'm looking forward to being in community and conversation with this esteemed panel.
Yes. Thank you, LaToya. Now, Brother Dwayne.
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy Pride Month. I've been working on trying to put more Black gay film out. My whole purpose of writing is to break the stereotypes about Black gay men and the Black gay community and what we have to deal with as being Black and gay. And so, as you mentioned earlier, I'm about to pitch a television series, all gay television series.
Yay.
And I finished up on a couple of films that I'm looking to be looked at.
Awesome. Like I said, the representation matters. Okay, Frederick.
Hi, everyone. Again, happy Pride. So happy to be with you all today. I can't remember the last time I talked with you through this format, but, basically I have been busy. Higher education life has kept us busy. Students are active politically and academically on their college campuses, including mine. And then by early daytime before work and at nighttime, I'm working on my novel writing. And so basically my life is like what they call it, wash, spin, repeat. Write, work, come home, eat a quick dinner, go back to writing, and maybe I'll throw in an occasional happy hour here and there. But that's pretty much my life. I think last time I talked to you, I think I was living in Los Angeles, and I've since relocated to the San Francisco area. And so that's been a nice transition for me as well. So again, happy to be with you today.
Great, because I know I get to see you from time to time on Twitter and Facebook. So thanks for the peeps. Now, one thing I've learned, and it was a quote that came up as an African proverb. So I want to put it out to 3 of you. And the quote says, "Until the lion tells his side of the story, the tale of the hunt will always glorify the hunter." So I'd like to ask all of you what that quote means to you personally. Any one of you can jump in now.
You're gonna stump us with a big old academic question, and that is totally cool. I mean, I think that and I won't speak for everyone, but I can imagine that at the base level, it's really about having voice to tell your own story. have your voice to tell your own story in the way that you live and experience your life. And, this whole idea of storytelling is something that's been part of our community as Africans, as African Americans, for eternity. And then it's also academically, storytelling is like the basis of like Black feminist thought, queer theory, all these other academic theories which talk about the importance of people being able to claim who they are by using a voice. So that's what I think about.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, and I'm not going to ask you to repeat it again, but what I think it is a lot of times our stories that are being told are stereotypical, and also as well as people are afraid of what they don't understand, and until we start breaking the stereotypical television shows and novels, people aren't going to really understand who we are. And we also have to take ownership of making sure that we educate them as well.
Thank you, Wayne. LaToya.
I think for me, you always tell a story that favors you. You're always a hero in your own story. And to me, I think that when we have an opportunity to hear all sides of the story, you get to hear the hunt from the predator as well as the prey, if prey is the appropriate term for it. I think that we have a responsibility to tell our own story. I refuse to let someone else dictate my own narrative when I have the capacity and the ability to write my own story and to tell my own tale as it was. So I do think that we all have to be conscious of how we represent ourselves, because if we don't be authentically ourselves as much as we can, then people will be forced to believe a false narrative because they have nothing to contradict what they see, even if what they see is total nonsense.
There you go. There you go. Which brings me into my next question. Now, how has representation in LGBTQ literature changed in the past decade?
I'll take this question. I think that the representation has got better by leaps and bounds. I am an avid reader, and one of the ways that I sort of manifested my own lesbian identity was seeking out novels and short stories or written explanation and portrayals of myself and others like me in the community. And not to discount those that went before us, but it was a little bit sparse back in the day.
Yes.
Now you see such a manifestation of every identity being represented. You have queer, trans, lesbian, bi, poly, you name it, you name an alphabet letter, you got somebody that has written a book about it. And I think it's wonderful. I think it suits us not only as readers, but also as people who may be curious and don't want to go to false avenues of information. This is a good way that there's such a plethora that you can find answers in a book and be able to be comfortable seeing yourself represented in those pages. So we've come a long way, baby, but we still have a ways to go.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Frederick, Dwayne, and anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, I think we have come a long way, but I think there's such a variety under the umbrella of being gay, and I think a lot of people, they don't see the whole picture. And I think even though we've taken leaps and bounds, I think we need to still get away from stereotypical gay men and gay women. And I don't think that we've kind of gotten there yet. I mean, we're getting there, but I that's just my thought.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, some of my thoughts on the transition. So like, I can only go back as far as my first queer reading was Elin Harris. That's who I first started reading. And we know that a lot of his themes, and I think we're in the 30th year anniversary of when his books first started coming out, like 1994, somewhere in there. And I used to have to sneak and read them with my friends. But what I will say is that I think we've seen the evolution of like kind of the coming out story, the coming out narrative. We've seen an evolution from, I don't want to say the woe is me, no one understands me, no one understands my struggle. I think we have totally evolved from that type of story. And of course, I have no idea what came before Elin Harris, so please correct me if I'm missing people who came out before Elin Harris. But now to today, kind of building upon what LaToya shared, there is such a diversity of Black queer authors who are both mainstream and independently published, who are doing so many great books. Like even just this summer, I'm thinking about like people like Carmen Lee or Rebecca Weatherspoon, Julian Winters, etc., who are, like back in the day, I feel like the base was I'm struggling to come out, no one understands me. The happy ending is I'm out. Now it's like people in literature are just who they are. So the base point is not a struggle narrative. The base point is I am who I am, and this is my life in romance or in romantasy or in, if you want to go with fantasy and dragons or something like that. So that's what I see as some of the transitions. So I feel like today people are, people who are writing are able to write a variety of stories. And I'm really enjoying the diversity of stories, from that transition from the initial coming out narratives to now people just are and are unabashedly and unashamedly themselves.
Indeed. And yes, since you touched on one of my favorite genres, it's just romance. For me, since I'm a baby boomer, I remember when I first started reading books so far as romance. Now, Brenda Jackson was definitely on my short list of favorite authors in terms of Black love and romance. But see, the thing was, until you had James Earl Hardy and Elin Harris, like we were missing from that equation when it came to reading and stuff. And so, especially in that genre, because I know Brenda Jackson had her struggles because a lot of people had the attitude, oh, your books won't sell. Well, she proved them wrong. And she is one of the premier romance authors. Now, but when it comes to LGBT romance, I'm looking at, okay, so what's the representation like here? And now, are the authors the white authors here just not only just taking our space? Are they just not writing about us, or are they writing in a stereotypical way? And so, in terms of Romance Landia, I acknowledge each and every one of you for bringing your voice. So, but what do you see with that particular milieu? So as you say, Black love or say Black LGBT love in romance?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but I know that when I write stories about Black LGBT romance, I do a parallel to a heterosexual couple as well, to show that they're not that much different. Except, a woman can bear children. But outside of that, the same obstacles and decisions that they have to make and arguments that they have, even unfortunately, domestic abuse, it's all part of the baked in the cake. And so I always try and write a heterosexual couple in the stories just so people can see the parallel of the two, if that's what you're asking.
Oh yeah, that's definitely the part of the equation. Okay, Fred.
I think in terms of like when I think about current Black and queer romance novels, I do see and sense a lot of joy, a lot of happiness. Again, thinking about that bar of, no longer is the standard narrative, the I'm coming out, no one understands you, but it's the I'm gay, I'm lesbian, I'm trans, I'm poly, everything. And I have my world of my found family. I have family members who love and accept me for who I am. I'm bringing them along in the journey. And I see that a lot. And what I really like now, so another parallel I'm kind of seeing, back in the 90s, I feel like I saw more literature representing Black gay men's experiences. Today, I feel like I see more Black women's experiences within Black queer romance, and I love it, because I think that people deserve to see themselves in stories. And this is all tied to misogyny and everything, in terms of women's stories not being accepted, not being seen as important. Although we know that women drive the romance novel industry, and so why not Black women's stories within the queer spectrum and everything. And so I am really enjoying seeing the number of our counterparts and colleagues who are writing Black women love stories. And there's so many people we could probably name drop and name, and who we see, and hopefully at some point we'll be doing some recommendations as well.
Oh yes, we will. So that being said, we come to you, LaToya.
I think I want to piggyback on what Frederick was saying, that there is a wide array of authors who are capturing Black, gay, LGBTQ romances. There's a lot of authors, and I was even going through ticking them off in my head, that write love stories, and it's not the traditional boy meets girl, boy meets boy, girl meets girl. It is, I'm having my own life, I meet you, you have your own life, we have drama, we complain about you to our friends, they have drama, but then you have the happily ever after. I really appreciate that the books we are seeing are not losing sight that our characters exist in the real world. Unfortunately, there are drama and trauma that encompass us and impacts us as we're trying to find our Ms. or Ms. or whatever we want to call it, and live a glorious life, partnered or even tripled up, because we are open to the possibility. It doesn't have to be just two people in a relationship. It could be as many people that can coexist and have happy. And I do appreciate that authors are pushing the boundary to be more respectful and more reflective of our community.
And that is so true. And another thing that stood out, and I remember reading your book, LaToya, was the power of sisterhood.
Yes.
Every time I read that sisterhood comes out, because it's a powerful force, a powerful love, and it shatters the stereotypes that are out there. So now, who are your literary influences?
I'll jump in since I just finished talking. For me, I consider Zora Hurston as my number one top. Just a side note, she was a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, so she is my sorority sister. She is being, or has been, claimed as a member of the LGBTQ community. She lived an authentic life. She wrote fiction, she wrote nonfiction, she wrote essays. She was a woman, dare I say, ahead of her time. And she did not shirk from representing her community. If she traveled to Florida or Alabama, she wrote in the vernacular, not in a way to make fun of the way that people talk, but to respect them and say, I'm not going to clean up your language just for the masses. I'm going to present you as who you are. And for me, that sort of impacts how I write, because I want to be responsible in how I depict characters, particularly when it comes to characters that are within my community and represent people such as myself. Contemporaries, there are also, I love Fiona Zed, who is a phenomenal lesbian author who writes romance, some of it a little bit spicier than others. I love authors that are always challenging themselves. One of my favorite contemporary authors is Walter Mosley, who is a author who doesn't confine himself. He makes his living primarily writing detective novels, but sometimes he branches off into speculative fiction. I look at that as saying, don't limit yourself for what you want to write. As an artist, you want to keep pushing yourself and keep doing the things that charge you up and allow you to express yourself in different ways to different communities.
So true. Dwayne.
If I had to think, I think the first book that I really read that really stood out to me was, I think it was by Baldwin, Giovanni's Room.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read that, and then I read Elin Harris, and I was just like blown away. And so I would have to say they would have to be my influences as well as Mosley, as LaToya mentioned.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Fred.
So I'm going to mention three people from the past and then
Yes.
one person contemporary.
All
So from the
right.
past, Elin Harris, Terry McMillan, and Eric Jerome Dickey.
Mhm.
I
Mm-hmm.
was just
Yeah.
enthralled with their storytelling about Black life that included the range of experiences from the pain and trauma to just the everyday survival in the world, but with themes that center on families, relationships, little bit of excitement and adventure here and there. But yeah, Eric Jerome Dickey, Terry McMillan, and Elin Harris are the people who, as I was thinking about, putting my toe into the water of writing,
Yeah.
those are three people who I just looked up to in terms of both their careers and in terms of the ways in which they wrote and represented the communities, and still do today. Of the three that I mentioned, Terry McMillan is the only one who's still living with us, but their books live on forever. Current day, the person who I kind of aspire to pattern my life and career in writing after is a romance writer. She writes primarily straight romance. Her name is Kennedy Ryan. And
Mm-hmm.
right now, she is the queen of romance writing. She's Black. She's from North Carolina or Atlanta. Um, Her books they call them emotional romance novels, where
Mm-hmm.
you're going to get the happy ending, but you go along the road with a lot of social issues that the characters are involved with. She does a lot around autism in her novels, and a lot about autism and being a parent of an autistic young person in her
Mm-hmm.
personal life as well. And so Kennedy Ryan is just someone who's writing and career. When I look at who do I want to be like, who do I want to pattern my career after, Kennedy Ryan is like right now the North Star, who I think that many of us, when we go to like romance cons or book cons, the lines for Kennedy Ryan are just out the door now. And so Kennedy Ryan is like my A1 North Star right now.
Thank you. Now you're giving me some names from authors so that I can review on on some future date here.
Absolutely.
So, well, as for me, of course, I go back a few generations here. So the people that stick with me are, of course, Elin Harris was one. Toni Morrison, because Toni, she's unapologetic about who she was. James Earl Hardy is one other of those influences in terms of my writing, because I say, to quote Toni Morrison, and this is a tone I live by when I'm writing, as she says, if there is a story you wish to read and it hasn't been written yet, then you must be the one to write it. I remember it's because Toni, when she was asked why she wrote the novel she did, and she said, why didn't include everybody? Well, her response was this: I write to black women, and if other people like that, that's okay. So those are amongst those that, for me, were my influences, and of course, seeing people and characters who looked like us. So, and as I mentioned earlier, as we stand on the shoulders of the greats before us, let's just take a little quick trip back into the Harlem Renaissance.
Mm.
When you think about the authors like Zora Neale Hurston and Langston Hughes and Richard Bruce Nugent and County Cullen, the days of Ma Rainey and Bessie Smith, etc. Who, in your mind, do you identify with from that era, if you were to choose a person or more than one?
Wow, Harlem Renaissance. So I'll go first because my answer is going to be kind of short. Langston Hughes, and I'll tell you why. I grew up in Detroit, product of the Detroit public schools. I went to a school called Renaissance. Considered one of the top schools in Detroit and Michigan. But Renaissance, all of our teachers were Black, all of our neighbors, postal workers, everyone was Black in Detroit. And our school was so culturally empowered that instead of reciting the Pledge of Allegiance every morning, we recited Dreams by Langston Hughes. Hold fast to dreams, go, life is a barren field frozen over with snow. There's one more stanza in that too. That poem sticks with me and every other Renaissance grad to this day. Dreams by Langston Hughes. So I have to say, I think the teachers, I love the fact that they were very intentional about what we recited, how they were kind of getting us culturally empowered. And so Langston Hughes is a part of like a memory that I have. Of course, I need to take a deeper dive into Langston Hughes' life and literature, but that poem, Dreams, always sticks with me as something that was important in my growing up years.
Thank you, Frederick. And hey, all of these are so important. Dwayne, how about you?
I have no clue. I really have no clue. I really don't have an answer for you for that one. I really don't. I did a lot of reading over the years before I even started writing. So, there were a lot of people that I just kind of like stayed into the novels, but I just can't think of one off the top, because even when Frederick was mentioning authors, I was like, I totally forgot, because I read all of Terry McMillan's books and some of Langston Hughes, Baldwin. But it's just something I never really thought about.
That's okay. That's okay. LaToya.
I guess the obvious answer would be Zora Hurston. But I also have an appreciation for Wallace Thurman on The Black of the Berry, because I think that when we look at the big names, he was right there in the midst and the thick of it, but I think he sort of got overshadowed by Hughes and Hurston and Cullen. And I like that and let's just call it for what it was, that there was an aspect of colorism that existed in the Harlem Renaissance. And I like the fact that he was very deliberate by saying, even if I'm of a darker hue, I'm still worthy to be counted as a great. And I'm still going to be cheeky when I talk about it, but I'm not going to let y'all off the hook. Y'all going to push me in the corner.
Yeah.
The rent parties, I'm going to be right there being my fabulous self. So I think other than Zora, I would also say I can see myself as a Wallace Thurman, or maybe a Dorothy West, even though she had her shine a little bit later with the wedding coming out after she passed on. But there was an abundance of riches for, those rent parties and going uptown at the Savoy. So good time was had by all.
I can remember that when I was back in the day, when I was a teenager back in the 70s. Of course, we called them quarter parties. When you were a certain age, you put that quarter party, you came in, you got some food and some drink, and you say, as long when the food was going, and of course you had the right DJ, yes, that was a party. If provided you knew who to get in touch with. If you were in the loop, you knew where the party was, because I could say that about here in Minneapolis. Back and said people didn't think about Black folks here in the Twin Cities until like Prince came along. But we were here. We've always been here, because we had the gay 90s, and we had the saloon, and these were clubs, but you didn't really see a lot of Black folks in those clubs. One, our population was still so small. So the thing you did was you found out who was holding the house party. And you went from there, because besides, house parties could go well after 1 o'clock, which means the clubs here closed at 1. So, and by the time it's 2 o'clock, the streets in downtown Minneapolis have rolled up for the night, if you get my drift.
Okay.
So, with that being said, now, next question. What does Pride Month mean to you?
I think at a base level, it's it means being proud of who you are, coming to acceptance of who you are, having a sense of community with other LGBTQ people, bringing people along to teach, and being open to learning more about like how the LGBTQ alphabet is expanding and including everyone now. And then I think, and then I think there's two aspects that some people get into. There's the stereotypical, I don't want to say stereotypicals. If people want to have fun and go to the festivals and stuff, that is totally okay. And there's those who are involved with the politics as well, and that's totally okay too. So I think that what I see Pride like kind of expanding, and it just really means being accepting of everyone and not holding judgment about who and how people present themselves. That's kind of what I think of, when I think about Pride and Pride Month.
And also to kind of piggyback off of that, I think being able to be authentic and live authentically, sometimes I think that Pride has gotten lost in what Pride really should actually be about. As Frederick would say, the partying and everything is fine, but why not talk a little bit about what was his name, Raymond?
Oh yeah, I bet Bayer Rustin.
Rustin. Yeah, the gentleman that right that helped put together the March on Washington, and and I think some of our history needs to be more involved into Pride events. You do that during the day and then you go party at night. You know what I mean? And celebrate what you've learned and the fact that you can be who you are because of what people have gone through to get you to this point. So, I mean, that's pretty much what it means to me, and how far along we've become.
Indeed.
I totally agree, and I co-sign what Dwayne is saying. I think that we need to be conscious of our foremothers and brothers and non-binary leaders and activists that made it so that we could go to a Target and spend our money buying rainbow colored attire. And, not to put too much of a fine point on it, I think it's lovely that we talk about Stonewall and the proverbial brick that started the revolution. But there was plenty of people, as we were talking about the Harlem Renaissance, there were plenty of Black, Latino, person of color activists that was making it possible for us to go and have these tea dances, that they were having the after hour spots that empowered us and provided us a path to being able to walk down a street in our attire, or for some of the parties, lack thereof of attire. Because I've seen some of the pictures at some of these Pride parades. Y'all just walking down the street just half naked. So I think Pride needs to be about having the opportunity to be conscious and respectful of our past and plan for our future and enjoy our present, because every year we have more representation. Every year is not just the one or two storefront displays. We're seeing dedicated, whether it's lip service or not, we're seeing television programs that are talking to our elders, that are talking to the next generation. We're having books, as we were sitting on the panel talking, that are coming out that are allowing us to see more of our community. I think Pride is about recognizing we have a debt that we owe to those that came before us, and that we have the capacity to pay it forward by being role models for the next generation to come.
And that is so true.
Thinking back on what you just shared, LaToya, I really appreciate what you just shared and how you shared it and everything, and especially on that books aspect. Maybe we're going to go down memory lane a little bit. I have 2 points I want to make. One, I miss the fact that, or maybe I'm just not seeing them, I miss when Black Pride events used to have the literary salon.
Yes.
And the author panel, and like that whole 2-3 days before parties where it was just about Black, gay, and lesbian and trans artists displaying their work and providing that. I miss that. If I'm missing it somewhere, someone please educate me and let me know. And then the second thing, and so if y'all want to reminisce on that, I would love to reminisce on that, because that's how I met so many great people. The other thing is, I like how, Dwayne was sharing about, us knowing more about our history and historical figures. And I'm going to plug a book by Roderick Ferguson called One Dimensional Queer. And it's an academic book. It's really short, but he kind of traces how Pride was kind of shifted from being like a political protest movement to kind of the shallow, vapid pride that it's become today. And he specifically talks through white influencers in the 60s and 70s who made a deliberate attempt to shift the pride narrative from being political and a protest to a lifestyle and to bodies and to having a nice house and traveling around the world. And so that's something that I wish that some of our youth would kind of understand and see while they're having fun and while we're having fun as well. Also think through some of the kind of the politics of pride and how, what we see today with some of the beer companies and liquor companies sponsoring it. I don't know if some of our predecessors would want that. I have to wonder that. I have to ponder that.
Well,
sorry for interrupting.
I could say that, well, when Stonewall took place, I was 17. So at the time that I was in college was in 1970, there had been the first Pride, and knowing that Pride march wasn't what it is today, those were marches of protest and resistance. So there, in terms of the LGBT movement, and some of the people that led that were like Marsha P. Johnson, who was a trans activist, Sylvia Rivera. They would say so. There was a movie about Stonewall that talked about the movement, but the persons of color were absent from that movie. Then because we've always been part of it, but we just haven't been given the energy or it's the visibility. But yes, those first few marches were definitely about simply the right just to be our authentic selves, and there were no, shall we say, support systems out there. And even when the laws all were against us during that time. So, but that's something that needs to be part of the history that we carry forward to this younger generation, because a lot of them really don't know history. And if we don't share it, who will?
I will jump in just to, talk about the author panels. One thing I will say is that there is long history of Black prides, giving thanks to Earl Folks and all those with the Centers for Black Equity. I believe that help. I think I'm missing a letter, but those that facilitate Black prides.
Right.
I do think that the Black prides and the Black pride organizers, they are deliberate in trying to incorporate workshops. I have primarily went to like the bigger prides, like the DC Pride and the Atlanta Pride. But I would say also with the smaller prides, I want to recognize like Nashville Black Pride, Baltimore Black Pride, Philadelphia's Black Gay Pride, even Columbia, South Carolina and Charlotte, North Carolina Black Gay Pride. These are Black prides where they are very community driven. They are very inclusive. They have, the parties, but they also have the workshops. Now, to be fair, the author panels aren't as popping as they used to be. But I will say with Black Pride, we are very deliberate in making sure if you come to my town for a Black Pride that you're going to have a good time, but you're also going to leave with some education. I think that they're very deliberate when they have Pride panels and vendor fairs, that they have people there to provide information about voter registration, about health care, about financial education. So I do think that while there are some instances where you're going to see a bunch of go-go boys dancing and go-go girls be dancing, be fair, we have go-go girls at all the parties. But I do think that Black Pride makes a point of being a little bit more conscious.
And that is also important to say to connect, to stay in that loop, because just like generations ago, when we had Black newspapers that were there to talk about what's happening back in the day, and that was before John H. Johnson did Ebony and Jet as a way to stay connected. This is just as important, and we have the tools. we have this social media, and if we use it right, this message will get through to a lot of people. Now, that being said, I have this question for all of you. What advice would you give your 13-year-old self?
I would give my 13-year-old self advice to don't doubt yourself. If you feel something is right, stick to it. Don't let other people sway you for being your authentic self. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be times when you wish that you went with the okie doke. But when you look back at yourself, I would tell my 13-year-old self, it's going to be worth it. The toil and trials and tribulation is going to be worth it because you will get through it and you're going to be better for it.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'll say something very similar, partially because I've been keeping journals. They were school assignments at first, but then they became part of my life since like 8th, 9th grade, so around that time. When I look back at things that bothered me and that were so big to me, I realized now as an adult, that was nothing. And not to discount the intense emotions and feelings that adolescents have, but I think to build upon what LaToya shared is that anything you're going through, you're going to get through it. It's all going to work out. It's all going to work out. And and here's the funny part, the people you thought you were going to like back then, you're like, oh, I got delivered from something. So yeah.
Mine would be resilient and don't let other people's ignorance dictate how you should feel about yourself. And be smart and be careful and live your life.
Oh, indeed, as we ride on. Now, so in terms of support, what are some ways we can support our brothers and sisters in their writing and in their literary journey as those of us who are, quote, Black and LGBTQ?
I think one thing that I would say is, you have a lot of great, and I hate saying this term. I did a book signing and I was introduced as a gay author. I'm like, no, I'm an author that just happens to be gay. And I just think that as a community, we could put so much more of our stuff out there if we would support. I don't think that we support ourselves enough, because all the time we, always hear, why is there always, when you have a Black man or in a relationship or a Black woman in a relationship, it has to be with a white counterpart? We don't put more of the same, not that I have anything against interracial dating, but it just appears that relationships are not validated unless one of the members of the relationship is white. And if we want to see more of relationships of like two Black men can have a solid relationship as well as two gay women, and then you have people that are trying to get their stuff out there, people they won't support it. You know what I mean? And I just think that the one thing we need to start supporting each other, getting our stories out there, and start becoming that voice. We need to become a fist instead of 5 fingers spread out.
Indeed. Indeed.
Yeah. So the free stuff we can do is there is such a huge Black book community online that we can support and start following and reposting. Same with Black authors, same with Black authors who might happen to fall along the genders and sexuality spectrum that we can follow, develop community with, repost their event, repost their products and their books and projects when they come out, send them encouraging messages in their chats, in their posts and everything. Like those are free things we can do. We can also do things like request each other's books at our local libraries too. Libraries love ordering books. It counts toward our bottom line as authors. And so, that's something we can do. And schools as well, request our stuff to be in school libraries as well. And then, I know that it's a privilege to be able to buy books. I mean, to think about if I'm going to pop out like $15, $20, or I'm going to go decide I got to buy lunch and buy some groceries for the week. People have to make choices. So it's a privilege that I think all of us don't take for granted. But if someone has that privilege, to support by buying someone's work, please do so. And and the other thing you can do that's free as well is go to events, whether they're virtual or in person, just to at least show the booksellers, show the libraries that there is an audience for the kinds of stories that we want to have more out there.
Indeed.
I agree. It doesn't cost anything to talk up your favorite author. It doesn't cost anything to contact your local library and say, hey, can you order these books? It doesn't cost anything to do like a book club where you encourage other people to meet and talk about their favorite books. I think that word of mouth is fabulous. I think if you have an author in your life, show them support, write a review. If you read something that you don't quite hit the mark for you, realize that maybe it's not your particular cup of tea, but you can still share it with someone else who it might actually be their cup of tea. Introduce people to your favorite author and be open to recommendations from other people. I think the best way that you can support is to be open to knowing more about who's out there writing about stuff that you're interested in learning more about. And of course, buying the book, and Frederick hit it on the head. Sometimes it is a choice how you're going to spend the $15 or $20 or $30, however much a hardback is going for nowadays. But it's still sometimes a worthy investment, because how many of us have purchased something for $30 that is, in a sense, priceless because of what it adds to our life?
Indeed, indeed, indeed. And okay, which will segue into my next question. Okay, can you name some more authors to recommend to our listeners and readers here to follow up on this?
I can start with a few. So there's this Black woman author. I think she's on the East Coast. Her name is Ann Shade.
Okay.
Wonderful Black lesbian stories, novels, etc. And she's on Bold Strokes Books. She's really great. Cherie L. Greer is someone else who's really good. Dwayne and LaToya, of course. We're all we gotta support. We gotta recommend each other too. And then there's like people like who's up and coming. Oh, so Rashid Darden. He first started writing novels like in the mid 2000s, around the same time when I was starting to write stuff too. And I think Rashid's writing around, like kind of the Black college gay experience is just magical. I think some of the, like I used to always tell Rashid when we were on the circuit, I was like, Rashid, you're the best writer of all of us out here because your writing is so rich. So Rashid Darden, and then some current people stuff, and then I'm going to be quiet. There's an author named Carmen Lee who was out. She has this book that just came out called The 710 Split. It's about lesbians on a bowling team who fall in love with each other, which sounds so fun. And then let me see, A Little Kissing Between Friends by Chinsia C. Higgins, another Black woman who writes about Black lesbians in love. Those are some of the people who I would recommend as well.
Great.
You stole my Rashid Darden.
Well, let's just talk about Rashid Darden.
And that's proof positive that you need to share who you're reading, because that may introduce people, and it also supports Rashid, because I was going to say Rashid is an excellent author who has the series with the Black gay Greeks, but he also has a series that he's working on, he has a series about Black vampires in DC. So I would say Rashid Darden. If you're into speculative fiction, I would recommend Crystal Smith, as well as Stephanie Allen. Stephanie Allen actually is a publisher, BLF Press. She publishes authors, lesbian authors. So she's published works by Jewel Gomez. She's published works by Penny Mickleberry. Two contemporary authors that have a history of writing. I also would say Ellen Bennett is a good author. She writes more contemporary fiction. I would also say Aunt Georgia Lee, who is out of Georgia. She actually has a website, QWOC, which she promotes lesbian books written by women of, she promotes lesbian authors of color. So she's been phenomenal and basically shining spotlights on so many authors that's out there writing. So I think that there's so many authors in so many different genres, but I would say those were my top ones.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I actually, when I started writing, I created a book club called the Novelites. And it was 10 or 12 of us. And we always, because as an author, I saw how it was a struggle for myself. So I wanted to make it easier for other authors. So I actually have over 100 books autographed. But Rashid was one of the people that I was going to name. And that comes to mind, Keith Boykin. He does a lot of political stuff as well, and about LGBT rights and things of that sort. The only two that really comes to mind, but there are just so many great authors out there. And whenever I see their information, I always try and post it, because I have a lot of followers on my Facebook page. So I'm always telling the authors, post your stuff on my page, my permission, just to get your work, get your name out there and whatever. And, LaToya or Frederick, if you follow me on Facebook, feel free to post to cover your book. And, and you too, Mr. Graham.
Because will.
I provide a question of the day every day. So Facebook has made me a digital creator somehow, but I get a lot of traffic. So I'm all about promoting and support.
Amen. Now, getting to that, since we have a few minutes left, and I want to cover two things. First, I want to cover where people can purchase your books. And two, Frederick, you can talk about your upcoming release. So let's start with, where can we buy your books?
You can find my books at Amazon.com, as well as you can find the links at www.LaToyaHankins.com.
Great. Dwayne.
You can actually reach out to, actually my website is being overhauled right now, but for the most part, you can get them from Amazon, or just reach out to me on Facebook, and you can get them that way.
Great. Okay, Fred, you're up.
My website is frederickLsmith.com. There are links to purchase, where I'll direct people to go purchase books. I'm on all social media at fsmith827. And I always encourage people to go to either local independent Black or LGBTQ owned bookstores to either buy or order, or whatever your favorite bookstore is, they have a website where you can go order as well. But I really encourage people to support independent bookstores by finding our stuff, if it's available, by ordering it in independent bookstores.
Great. And tell us about your upcoming release.
Okay, yeah, so One and Done comes out on June 11th. I describe it as a Black, queer, higher ed Bay Area romance novel. It's on Bold Strokes Books, and it's set in San Francisco and Oakland. And there should be descriptions, I imagine, in the show links. And it takes place in university life. There's someone who's aspiring to be a university president. there's someone who's coming in to do kind of an accreditation job on this person's university. And initially they kind of butt heads, but eventually they get to their happily ever after.
Yes, and we all deserve our happily ever
And they're
after.
both Black.
Yes. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. I appreciate each and every one of you for being on this panel day for Pride Month. So the readers out there, viewers out there, check out the works by Dwayne Vernon, LaToya Hankins, and Frederick Smith. I said this is W.D. Foster Graham, and for your book chat version of The Conversation with Al McFarlane. See you on the next go round, and happy Pride Month.
Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.